With just 6 games left in the regular season, it's time to assess where the Heat stands before the playoffs. To look back on the chaos of the past week while looking ahead to possible rotation changes and what might happen in the postseason, there are questions about this team, and Rohan and Nadkarni of Sports Illustrated will join us to answer them all on this special episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Heat Nation. It's a Wednesday edition of Locked On Heat, your daily podcast covering all things Miami Heat, however you may be listening or watching on YouTube, Odyssey, or on your favorite podcast app. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every day. I'm David Ramil, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Wes Mint Chocolate Goldberg. We're joined today by a good friend of the show, a fantastic writer, world traveler, and probably the one man who Udonis Haslam is afraid to face. It's Rohan Nadkarni of Sports Illustrated. How are you, Rohan?
I'm great. Good to be back with you guys and a mint chocolate lover like Wes. Going to be an exciting show. Yeah.
Have you ever had Tim Tams before? That's a big question everybody wants to know.
No, I don't know that I know what those are.
That's all right. We introduced them yesterday. We've got a segment where we introduce credit cookies during after every Miami Heat victory.
Oh, I remember you guys. I remember you guys doing this. I don't remember if it was an episode I listened to, and that was when you guys were talking about Girl Scout cookies. And I think Ramil had mentioned he'd never had one.
Yes, That's right.
Which is insane. And I remember DMing you guys specifically that it was. I couldn't believe how you just glossed over that. Like. You just ignored it completely.
So you like stored this and you decided to bring it up now. I guess I inadvertently led you to this by bringing up the Tim Tams. But yes, let's all expose me for not having a Girl Scout cookie. That's all right.
How? But how? I just don't understand how. They're ubiquitous. I'm not even from this country, and I've had many, as you can tell.
Yeah, but you've been to Publix a lot, and on your way to getting a Publix sub, and you just while you're there, you probably check out the.
The thing is, I've never even bought them at Publix. I always acquire them through osmosis. Really, is like right. Someone has a Girl Scout cookie box that they're trying to get rid of, or somebody in the office is trying to. I don't know that I've ever.
Is that what happens? Like you get a box and you kind of just let it get cobwebs on there, and you go, "Hey, I've got this old box. You want to take it?"
Oh, people just give them away.
People give them away.
Moms and dads buy their daughters Girl Scout cookies, and then they just give them away at the office. We have like 4 boxes of Girl Scout cookies here because of that.
You just keep them in your freezer. I don't think I've bought a box in like 7 years. I don't know that I maybe even never have bought one.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this show's already off the rails, but so is the Miami Heat season, or at least it was last week, when on Wednesday there was obviously an altercation there that we've talked about quite a bit on this show between Erik, Spoelstra, Udonis Haslam, Jimmy Butler, and, well, the rest of the Miami Heat team. So, Rohan, we wanted to get your take on it because we haven't really talked since then. What was your perspective watching the fight play out on TV, and what did you think about the whole situation?
I think the optics of the fight were certainly worse than the fight itself. Okay. I think that I remember interviewing Duncan Robinson for a piece I wrote on Jimmy Butler once, and Duncan telling me literally their first practice, that whole group together, Jimmy getting in people's faces. And I remember Duncan telling me, we had seen this guy on ESPN. We'd know what happened in Minnesota. But they realized quickly, like, he's just trying to get the best out of everyone. And right. I think that, whatever the specifics of the fight are, we'll probably never know the full story. But to me, the optics of it are worse than the fight itself. To me, their problems are much more on the court than off the court. I'm not worried about this team splintering. I'm not worried about Jimmy Butler wanting out. I'm not worried about players losing faith in Erik Spoelstra. It's an opportunity for everyone to laugh at the Heat, and they got to kind of take the jokes. They got to, ride with it. They pride themselves on having a culture and having the culture rather. And when there are cracks, like, people are going to take shots, and you kind of have to be accountable to that. So, that's all fair. But to me, their problems ultimately are on the court. It's not off the court. And I was never really worried about the fight. It's people are going to run with certain narratives that maybe they've had about Jimmy and his career, et cetera. But it's on them to prove that, that was just a blip. It's on them to prove that, it's not going to have a meaningful impact.
What are some of the on the court problems that you're seeing? Because we just got done last night's episode talking about some of the rotation changes that Erik Spoelstra made. What were your thoughts on that, and what are some of the on-court issues that you have?
Well, I thought you did a great job, Wes. I saw your tweets kind of breaking down the switches the Heat made in their rotation. I'm sure you guys addressed this on yesterday's pod, but playing Jimmy with more shooters. Wes, I think you mentioned playing Jimmy more as a quote-unquote 4 in certain lineups, actions geared towards, instead of him initiating, ending with him. And I think that's interesting. To me, there are kind of two big issues here that I don't know that the three of us are necessarily going to solve on this podcast, but the two issues I think I have are, and it ties into the rotation changes you were talking about, Wes, but it's, are the Heat's best players, do they play the best together, right? And you pointed out, Jimmy played many fewer minutes with Kyle Lowry in that game against the Kings than he typically does, which is good to get a regular season win. It's not great when you start thinking about their playoff prospects. And two, it's, well, these kind of go hand in hand. I guess it's three issues. Two is, we've talked about this all year long, their half-court offense. I mean, we wouldn't even talk about that. We talked about that year long, but how poorly their defense played during that 4-game losing streak, I think, is a major cause for concern, because that's the side of the court where they have to hang their hat on. And if their defense is getting killed with their best players on the floor, I mean, that's a major issue. So was that a blip, or have teams found something in their defense that they were able to exploit?
Yeah, I think the other thing that stands out with some of the rotation changes too is, you're right. Like, I mean, Kyle Lowry only played 25 minutes last night, and I think part of that was given that it was a blowout for most of the fourth quarter. So we'll see if maybe some of that time stuff changes a little bit over the next few games. But there are two different kind of modes that this Heat team are playing, right? There's the mode that they play with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo and Kyle Lowry. Even though Lowry tries to push the pace, it's still very much more of like an opportunistic type of offense, trying to hunt mismatches and things like that, versus the team that we saw for December and January when the Heat were making that big run, which was just a lot of 3-point shooting, kind of hitting that 40-point threshold with 3-point attempts and things like that. And I wonder if that is also something that contributed to the Jimmy Butler blow up on the sideline, because it kind of felt like there was this push and pull for so much of the season between two different ways of playing. And I don't know that we really knew the best way. I think, like, you would think just kind of that put your best players on the court, and that's probably the best version to play. But given the way that the NBA has changed and the importance of 3-point shooting, like that, maybe that's not true. Maybe you actually do need to play your best players less if your best players aren't necessarily your best 3-point shooters, right? And so I think that might have been what contributed to the blow up, if they were really trying to tell Jimmy Butler to do some certain different things offensively, and then Jimmy Butler responding to Spoelstra, I'll play however I want. It kind of puts you down that path. And so I don't know. I'm with you, Rohan. I'm still a little concerned. I think that the fact that they didn't play Victor Oladipo or Markieff Morris at all in that game was maybe the way that you get halfway there, right? You get halfway to, we'll play more of our shooters, but more of our best players. And I think it goes back to something that Pat Riley said even before the season, when he said, hey, we know who our best players are now, and we're going to put players around our best players to help our best players succeed. And after about a couple weeks, maybe Erik Spoelstra and everybody else had determined, you know what, Victor Oladipo and Markieff Morris, they don't make our best players better. Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, Caleb Martin, when he comes back from injury, those guys do. And maybe that's something they learned over the course of the season, and maybe it's something that they concluded. So it'll be interesting to see how all that shakes out.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I do think shortening the rotation, I don't think they can keep Vincent out. I think Vincent's become a really important player for them. Their offense with Oladipo on the floor hasn't been very good. It's a tough position for Spo, because guys like Vic, Markieff, they're really respected vets. They've, and they put in a lot of effort, a lot of work, so much time behind the scenes to get ready to play again, that I do think he owed it to them to give them a shot in the rotation. Yeah. But I do think that they can't be in there just for the sake of them being veterans. I don't know that they're making their best players better, as you mentioned, Wes. I also want to say, because David was one of the few people who had my back, but I said this, I think in January, I got to find the tweet and I got to find the Heat's offense before and after. But I said, the Heat's offense is playing so well, I don't know how they incorporate Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo back into it. I said that sometime in January, because their 3-point shooting in December and January was off the charts good. Mm-hmm. And it just, to me, they've slipped out of top 10 in the offense. And I said this in a story I wrote recently. That's not surprising to me because when you play Jimmy and Bam together, I think it puts a little bit of a ceiling on your offense.
But how realistic is this? Like, we're having these discussions on a macro level as we're looking at this team, and it's like, yeah, maybe guys like Strus and Vincent contribute in ways that others do not, but it's not realistic. Like, I just can't imagine Erik Spoelstra rolling out lineups frequently throughout the playoffs when you face a Milwaukee or a Brooklyn or any team like that and saying, well, we're not going to go to Jimmy as often, especially not when he's your star player. And we've seen the altercation that happened last week, just kind of tie in all together. I'm not sure that while we can see a game in Sacramento and things we've seen and we've parsed over the course of the regular season as perhaps evidence that maybe these other players help on a more significant level, that you can go away from the guys that brought you here, especially when you have Kyle Lowry at this point in his career, when you have Bam Adebayo out there and his limitations and everything else. You kind of have to accept them. I mean, Spo is a big fan of saying we lean into what we do better and we keep building on that rather than changing course over the course of the regular season. And I think that's something to consider moving forward. But anyway, we'll take a break here and we'll look ahead to some of the upcoming matchups for the Miami Heat. But first, a reminder that today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, daily fantasy made easy, and easy is really what they're all about. As fantasy props and pick'ems get more popular, PrizePicks is making it easy for you to play. They do that with the best NBA DFS prop game on the market, offering more NBA props than any other DFS prop operator. PrizePicks offers any prop you can think of, from points scored to rebounds and even steals. And check out PrizePicks Power Play. Here's how it works. Predict the over-under on a player's fantasy production, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry, and it's just you versus the projected fantasy totals for a limited time. PrizePicks is an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our users. It gets $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point, but you must use the code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer available just for Locked On fans. Sign up today and use the code NBA for $50 for free if a player in your PrizePicks entry scores a single point. Do it all using the award-winning app on the Apple App Store and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. PrizePicks is safe and offers fast withdrawals, so don't hesitate. Check out PrizePicks.com and use the promo code NBA, or go to your app store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy.
Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and it's available wherever you get your podcasts. We were talking about the rotation changes there, and David, I think you asked an interesting question about whether or not you can play your best players less. But I really think what those changes had to do with was just empowering Jimmy Butler and even Tyler Herro to play with more spacing. And you look at what Victor Oladipo was bringing to that team, and, you know, it wasn't a large sample, but given that, you know, in the minutes that Oladipo was on the court, the Heat were averaging 5 fewer three-point attempts per 100 possessions than when he was off the court, and they were shooting nearly 4 or 5 or 6% less, whatever it was, when he was on the court. And so obviously it wasn't helping. And then putting Jimmy Butler in those positions with more spacing, it's a little bit like what Erik Spoelstra did with LeBron, right? And then you kind of give LeBron that space to roam, and the fact that he gets to finish plays, but also initiate and kick out the shooters. I wonder if we've seen now. I know that Caleb Martin has to come back and they need to figure it out, but if this is basically, are these the dudes? Are these the dudes that they're going to roll with the rest of the season and in the playoffs? And is Victor Oladipo basically, is this experiment over for the Heat and Victor Oladipo? Rohan, what do you think?
I don't know that it's over. And I will say, you've also seen, I think, Spo in the past, like, he'll go to a guy that's been out of the rotation for 6 or 7 games and they need him in a certain spot and he delivers. And that's good enough to get them back in. To me, I think Oladipo is capable of having a moment. There might be a playoff game where he's needed. Maybe there is that game where Herro doesn't have a shot and he's getting hunted in the fourth. They give Oladipo a shot and it works. But in terms of their regular rotation, if we're talking about, to me, it's who are their best 8 guys? Who are their best 8 guys right now? And then you kind of will adjust based off matchups here and there. Remember, in that Boston series in the bubble, you'd get those random Solomon Hill 4-minute stretches in the first half, or, you know, you'd get Derrick Jones Jr., some spot minutes here defensively, etc. Who are your best 8 guys? And you build around there. So that's not to say they won't ever use Victor Oladipo, they won't need him, etc. But if we look at their top 8, I think it starts with Jimmy, Bam, Kyle, Tuck, Herro. So that's 5. And then I think Vincent's got to be in there. I think Deadman's got to be in there because you need a backup big. And then I think it's who's that 8th spot, and that's where it gets tricky. I think Robinson, right? I mean, you can't get rid of Duncan entirely. So
right. I wonder where Caleb Martin factors into that, because he's slid a little bit since the All-Star break.
A little bit, but he's also, I think, had some of their best on-off numbers since the All-Star break. So I think Martin and Robinson, I think, are probably kind of that swing piece. Yeah. The thing is, it's in the first round of the playoffs, you're probably playing 8 or 9 guys, but if you're really making a deep run by the conference finals, et cetera, it really becomes 7-8-man rotations, and that's where it's going to get really interesting for Miami. But I'm with you, Wes. Like, I can't imagine them playing without Duncan or without Robinson, but if Vincent's in the lineup and Deadman's playing back up 5 minutes, I mean, there are going to be some tough decisions that have to be made.
Yeah, you didn't even mention Strus, and he's starting right now. I don't know. Are we reading too much into the one Kings game lineup rotation changes, or
almost definitely?
Okay. Yeah, I said that last night on the show. I think we're reading too much into it, but yet it's also evidence of something that works. And we've seen Spo kind of look at this and say, "Oh, it works," and this allows him the freedom to kind of continue to tinker. But I mean, I keep coming back.
I think you're like, don't read too much into the results, but I think there's a process that we're reading into, and that's kind of what we're discussing. It might not be looking the same the entire time, but there's a thought process that Spoelstra's obviously going through.
And is it just kind of augmenting the problems that we've talked about all season long, that they're going through these changes, like with 6 games left in the regular season?
Yes.
Like, this is the worst place to be in for a title contender. It's like, well, let's figure this out right before we enter into the playoffs against potentially the 7th seed.
I'll push back on that a little bit, because this is really the team before all the, like, it was bad to try to work Victor Oladipo and Markieff Morrison when they did. And they're sort of just hitting the reset button on that. They're just not the reset button, really the abort button on that entire situation. This group knows how to play together. I actually think it would have been worse to keep trying to force the Oladipo thing to happen.
Well, I'll push back on that slightly, Wes, only because
well, I'll push back on both of you.
Yeah. Well, on one hand, yes, I think they kind of hit abort on Oladipo and Morris. At the same time, I still think they have no idea who their final 5 players are in a playoff game. And if it is Herro, Butler, Lowry, Bam, and Tucker, why have they played so few minutes together? They've been available now enough games that I'm going to look it up on the fly here, but that lineup has been available for enough games that I don't understand why.
They've played 15 or 16 minutes in the fourth quarter total all season.
And that doesn't make any sense. I don't know why Spo has been so stingy with that group. And if it's really going to be his closing lineup in a playoff game, well, why is it not played more time together?
What's
I don't
that
get
rotation
it.
again? Sorry, fill me in again. What's the rotation?
The starters with Tyler Herro in the 2 guards.
Instead of place at Duncan, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So,
and David, it kind of goes back to something you were saying earlier. It's like, if you're not trusting your top players, if you don't think your top players are your top players, then what are we really doing here? And how does that work in the playoffs? Because that, to me, just signals a lack of trust in that lineup. I don't think it signals a lack of trust in the individual players, but obviously there's something about that lineup that Spoelstra doesn't like, unless he's playing like 3-dimensional chess and he just doesn't want anybody to see that lineup too much. But yeah, Rohan, to your point, like, the injuries are no longer a factor. We just don't see it anymore.
It's Lowry, Tucker, Butler, Adebayo, Herro, 14 games, 51 minutes, a minus 7.9 net rating. And I'm pretty sure that net rating was a positive until the Philly game. I'll try to look that. I believe that lineup switched entirely during that Philly game. It got into the minus. Although in that Philly game, Martin was closing instead of Tucker, and they couldn't score offensively. So I could be wrong on that, but it just is 51 minutes for an entire season, and they've been available. Those guys have been available for more than 14 games together. So it's obvious that Spo is, you look at their most used lineups, okay? Their 3 most used lineups. It's the starting 5, but we know Spo doesn't like to go to Duncan in the 4th, so that lineup's not going to close. The next most used lineup, Vincent instead of Lowry. We know Lowry's going to play in the 4th quarter, so you throw that one out. Then their next most used lineup, it's got Herro and Robinson together. Throw that one out. Then their only other lineup they have over 100 minutes plays is a bench unit, the Deadman, Martin, Vincent, Strus, Herro. They have no lineups over 100 minutes played together that we think they're going to use in the 4th quarter of a playoff game. I mean, you could keep going down the list.
I did this experiment the other day, Rohan, and I was just
got
trying to figure it out. And there is not a lineup that has been heavily used enough to the point where you're like, oh, this is the one Spo likes. Like, there's just not anything there. I even wonder if PJ Tucker is part of the closing lineup.
Yes. Yeah, I was just going to bring that up. Like, we've been kind of quietly glossing over this, the fact that PJ has been kind of bad. Like, the defensive side of it has been okay
since
for
the All-Star
most
game.
part. Yeah, but he has struggled. His mobility just isn't there. The shot isn't falling the way it once did earlier
offensive
this
rebounding.
season. Yeah, there's been problems with PJ out there. So I mean, we're talking about this now, but is he really part of the best lineup on the floor? And it's just you don't have any other options, right? Because you can't put Markieff Morris in there. Oladipo's not playing at 100%. Strus doesn't really provide much on that end, certainly not defensively, despite what our YouTube comments must say. So why are we agreeing that this is the best lineup when in fact it might not be with PJ Tucker kind of
I keep kind of going back to, all right, well, we know, like, I think, what was it? Erik Spoelstra was asked about, like, Tyler Herro last night, about giving Tyler Herro more space, and he was like, yeah, but Jimmy Butler, getting him more space. Like, he went out of his way to talk about if Erik Spoelstra is troubleshooting for a problem, it's putting Jimmy Butler in more space, right? And that much has been obvious. And I wonder if that might give a hint to what the optimal closing lineup might be. So if you take PJ Tucker out because that 3-point shot is just not what it was before the All-Star break, then maybe and putting Jimmy Butler in space also sort of requires him playing the 4. Maybe they shift small and it's Kyle Lowry, Tyler Herro for his shot making, Caleb Martin for his two-way, and guys like a 38% 3-point shooter, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo.
So I do think that that's a possibility, and we will see it. 2 things on that lineup. One, it's really hard for me to imagine PJ Tucker not playing big minutes, playing the important minutes of a playoff game. As much as
Did he last year? Did he last year?
In certain matchups from Milwaukee.
In certain matchups. I mean, he was on the floor in that Game 7 against the Nets. I mean, and I think that I know Durant went off for 50, but I think you look at the fourth quarter and overtime of that game, how tired Durant was. Remember, he airballed a shot in OT. I don't think that happens if he's not being absolutely hounded by PJ Tucker.
Right.
And it's also just different in the playoffs. You know, you're guaranteed at least one day off between every game. The travel is a little bit more manageable. So, you know, I have just a hard time imagining Tuck's not.
And you signed PJ Tucker for this exact reason.
Exactly. And I think that at their best defensively, he's included in the lineup. Now, the lineup you mentioned, the Caleb instead of PJ one and Herro on the floor too, that's the lineup that got lit up by the Sixers backups when they just, you know, Maxey went after Herro time and time again. So I'm also intrigued by that lineup. But 2 things. 1, we've seen it got lit up. 2, they've also barely played together. So it just is, Wes, maybe I got to go down there, but I'm kind of counting on you to ask at his next press conference if he thinks he knows who he wants to play at the end of a playoff game yet, or if that even matters at this point. But maybe I got to ask him. Maybe I got to get down there. But because I have no idea.
I'll ask. No, I mean, I'll ask him that. He'll say no. But and maybe.
But I mean, if he says, but if his answer is going to be revealing either way.
Yes, absolutely. And maybe that's the better way to go at this point. Like, instead of just sort of making one up and just guessing, maybe it is just like, all right, it's matchup dependent. We'll see who's got the hot hand in this matchup. Maybe it's Solomon Hill. Maybe it's Derek Jones Jr. It's sort of like one of those, right? And I don't know. Erik Spoelstra has proven to be really good at managing a playoff series in the past. And so maybe there's a certain amount of trust that we have to have in him. But yeah, not the best place to be when you were the top seed in the East for most of the year and continuity was supposed to be your thing.
Well, I'll just say it's very atypical. It's possible that they can go into the playoffs with this being their strategy, but it's very atypical of a contender to not have an idea of what their best 5 are, or even what their best play is down the stretch. They have no idea what they want to do offensively down the stretch.
Yeah, and it's atypical, but it kind of feels like that's how the season's going for. Like, does Brooklyn know they're closing 5? I think Philadelphia.
But it doesn't matter, right? Because it keeps.
I don't know that,
but
Milwaukee
it keeps boiling
does.
down to what we talked about. Like you've made this point so many times. Like you can afford not to have these things set in concrete because you can just go to Kevin Durant. That's the option. When you've got Jimmy Butler and he's not able to score at the same level or even close to it, that's where things fall apart.
Yes,
and you know your lineups. Miami is counting on continuity because all of their players have obvious flaws, and we can't expect Jimmy Butler to have another bubble-like run in the playoffs, because I don't think that's realistic at this point in his career. But we'll talk a little bit more about some of the upcoming matchups and some bigger picture items and questions about this Miami Heat team in the next segment. But first, just a reminder that this show is brought to you by Built Bar, Rohan's favorite protein bar. He loves all the different flavors except for, like most people, the combination of chocolate and mint. But I'm sure it's delicious. My wife loves it. I married her before I knew that she appreciated those two combinations of flavors. So either way, though, look, protein bars, you try some, you don't necessarily like the way they taste. They're kind of chalky in some cases. They don't taste great. You eat them because you have to, or you think they're part of your diet. But you're not sacrificing anything when you get a Built Bar, because they're 100% covered in chocolate. They're soft and easy to chew. And best of all, they come in a variety of different flavors. You can get a mixed box with all of your favorites. You can try all the different combinations, see if you like them, even mint chocolate. So many great so much great nutrients that you get out of these protein bars. And at the same time, they kind of fill you up. If you're looking for a snack in between meals, if you're looking for something to fuel your workouts, then Built Bar is the option for you. And again, so many different flavors. You can choose them all, but only if you go to built.com and use the promo code LOCK15, and you get 15% off your order. So use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off, but only if you go to built.com. Just a reminder that you can always reach us via email at lockedonheat@gmail.com or via Twitter using the hashtag AskLOHeat. Be sure to please subscribe to the show wherever you get the podcast and leave a review. We love hearing back from all of you. We're here with Rohan Nadkarni of Sports Illustrated. We're talking about some of the concerns for the Miami Heat as they enter the playoffs. And this week's not going to get any easier with them. We're recording this on Tuesday evening, and they're less than about 24 hours away from a matchup against the Boston Celtics, who have been really, really good despite an overtime loss of the Toronto Raptors. But of course, that was without their starting center, Robert Williams, who is going to be missing a prolonged amount of time. And of course, they were also resting Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and they were still able to take a plucky Raptors team into overtime. So that speaks more about the Raptors than it does the Celtics. I think the Celtics have proven over the last few weeks that they're really good. What are you looking forward to the most in that matchup, Rohan?
Just to see kind of the intensity the Heat come out with. I mean, it'd be one thing if they lost. I mean, Boston's a tough team. I think even without Rob Williams, they're going to be very tough to beat at home, assuming everyone else is healthy. But can the Heat avoid what's been happening to most of the Celtics opponents, which is getting just run off the floor? Boston has been a juggernaut the last few weeks of the season. I think you could argue they're the favorite to come out of the East. I have them in Milwaukee 1 and 2. Milwaukee, I'm giving a slight edge to just because of Giannis. But Boston's been an absolute juggernaut. They are demolishing teams when healthy. Losing Rob Williams definitely hurts them. So, I think remains to be seen just how much effect it's going to have on their lineups with him out. But can the Heat keep it close? A win would be great, but can they even just keep it close? Because teams have not been able to do that against a healthy Boston over the last couple of months of the season.
Who are the top teams in the East right now?
Good question.
I think the two best teams in no particular order in the East right now, I would go with at full strength Milwaukee and Boston. Or those are the two teams that the most.
Not full strength. They're not going to be. I think Robert Williams. Robert Williams.
The Williams injury definitely hurts. I do think Grant Williams is going to give them valuable minutes. Tice, that's where it starts to get dicey. But I still think Milwaukee, they've been so good with Holiday, Middleton, and Giannis all healthy. Obviously, nobody has an answer for Giannis. So I'm still really high on Milwaukee in a playoff series, and now they have Brook Lopez back as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Milwaukee has proven at this point just to be the safest team in the East right now, and probably the best one. And Giannis is making a really good MVP case here. When we talk about matchups in regards to the Miami Heat, David and I keep talking about, like, obviously Boston was not an ideal matchup. Every broadcast is contractually obligated to say that nobody wants to play Brooklyn in the first round. But who are like the most dangerous matchups to you for the Miami Heat in the postseason?
Boston, Brooklyn are the obvious ones. I think Toronto is a really bad matchup for them. I think our friend Nikias Duncan's pointed this out.
Same thing. Yeah.
Like the Heat's half-court offense against Toronto has been awful. There's been a tough matchup the last couple of years. Toronto's going to go small. They're going to switch everything. They're going to have lengthy defenders to throw at basically every position on the floor. The Raptors fans obviously believe that Precious is better than Tyler Herro. I just think, but I think Toronto's a genuinely bad matchup. And I'll tell you what, if there's any coach I think can go adjustment for adjustment, matchup for matchup, scheme for scheme in a playoff series with Erik Spoelstra, it's Nick Nurse. Nick Nurse is a hell of a coach, man. I think the Raptors, I've been saying all year long the Raptors are going to make someone's first round hell. It would not even shock me if they somehow made the second round. So, yeah, I think Toronto's going to be a bad matchup for whoever they play, but Miami especially.
Where does this Miami Heat team what can they accomplish? Because I mean, we're talking about this, and I keep just thinking about the fact that we don't really know what this team can do. And I get this sense for a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference, like they could be a finals representative, or they could be out in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just not sure what to make of Miami and what it is.
We were very confident very recently in the Heat, and now we're not.
Yeah, I think things have gone a little worse there. Not just because of the tirade, but because of the losses magnifying things. Because we kept, a lot of hopes were being pinned, and probably wrongly so, on Victor Oladipo and what he could do, because he felt like that he was going to be the right kind of player, because he was a versatile player, because he can add so much defensively, and yet because he's not at 100%, it's just magnified the fact that Miami has bigger flaws outside in this roster. And I don't know what to make of this group. And I know the bigger question is probably whether or not a first round exit would be considered a failure for this team. I wouldn't consider it necessarily such, but I think how do you assess what this team can do in the playoffs when you don't really know what this team is capable of?
And how do you assess David's statement that a first round loss wouldn't be a disappointment?
Well, first of all, you can't assess what they're going to do in the playoffs. At the end of the day, I rank them 5th in the East in terms of who I believe is the best odds to make the title. Yeah, behind Philly. I mean, at the end of the day, two talents like Harden and Embiid, it's just tough. Also, they're going to get to the free throw line. If you have to play them in a game 7 and they get to the line like 30 times, I mean, what are you going to do? Yeah. But first of all, you can't assess what they're going to do in the playoffs. You can't. The East is just chaotic this year. Having said that, a first-round loss, that's a failure. That's a disappointment. This team, I think, expects at the very least to make the conference finals. So I'm not saying that they're not going to lose in the first round, but if they do, that's a disappointment. You have to at least get out of the first round. And
then do you blow it up afterwards if they lose?
That's the question, right?
I don't. It's way too early for that kind of talk. But let's cross that bridge. Let's cross that bridge when we get there.
Nope.
But
talk about it now. Blow it up.
You can't hedge like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
yes or no?
I don't.
Ready to blow it up?
No, because I don't think they can.
You can't. That's
true.
And
everybody's comfortable trading Jimmy Butler because they're going to get younger and better all of a sudden. It's exactly. No, that doesn't work out.
Yeah.
You're not trading Jimmy Butler for Donovan Mitchell. It's not happening.
No, that's never going to happen. Are you trading him for LeBron James though? No, I'm kidding. I mean,
no, you're not.
You're not.
Would you?
Yes.
Would Miami trade him? Would Miami trade Jimmy Butler?
I don't know what Miami would do, but are you asking me? Yes, I would trade Jimmy Butler for LeBron James. That's not even a polarizing take, is it? Of course you do.
I think some people would argue that, especially from the Heat fan base, they would argue that they're kind of done with LeBron, that at his age he's significantly worse or something like that. I think that's ridiculous, first of all. But
our fan base was more done with LeBron than Cleveland, and they welcomed him back, no problem.
That's a very good point.
Wow. So are we breaking news here? LeBron to Miami and place for Jimmy Butler?
No.
So says Rohan Nadkarni of Sports Illustrated.
Rohan, just say it, and then we'll social clip this out, and this will be the one that goes viral.
All right, social clip this. I love Jimmy Butler, and I hope he finishes his career with the Heat. I love that guy.
After having won a title?
Yes, ideally after having won 2 titles. We'll go there. We'll take it. Yeah, we'll go even further.
Jimmy Butler is the greatest Miami Heat player of all time?
We talked about this.
Well, number 1 is D Wade. Number 2 is UD. Number 3 is Zoe. Number 4 is Bosh. Number 5 is LeBron. I'll put Jimmy at number 6 on my list.
You forgot Mario Chalmers.
I did forget Mario Chalmers. The bubble was very inspiring. I'll say that.
Yeah, you were Jimmy Butler's on the fucking Mount Rushmore. You put him up there right now, knock Zoe off. Screw your kidney disease, et cetera, et cetera. You were kind of harsh. Yeah.
Ramil's always got to go 1 degree too far.
You said it, buddy. You said it. We've got the tape on this.
And nobody ever said, fuck your kidney disease, for the record. Nobody ever said that.
Oh well, there goes your credentials. Anyway, you usually bring a hot food take. I don't know if you've got anything to share with us now. I didn't ask you beforehand, so I'm kind of springing this on you as we're wrapping up today's episode. But anything you want to say on the gastronomic world that you want to share with our audience?
Oh, you're really putting me on the spot today.
Can I ask a question? If you're not prepared, I'll give you a minute to think about it. Where do you stand on melon on pizza?
Oh God.
I don't know that I've ever had melon on pizza.
Because you're a human being, Rohan. That's why.
Wasn't helpful.
Yeah, I listen, to each their own, I guess. I would try it probably, but I'm not seeking it out. It's like a Girl Scout cookie. If it's given to me, I'll eat it, but I'm usually not seeking it out.
Put it in the freezer. Apparently, it stays there eternally. Do they not break down? Like you just keep them in there and they're fine for like
years.
I was given this back in 1987. Yes. They're still good. I mean,
I've taken my frozen Girl Scout cookies 10 years later. Have went to a Girl Scout and exchanged them for fresh Girl Scout cookies, and they're like, it's the same thing. Don't even worry about it.
What? This is something that's done. You just go there to return policy from the Girl Scouts Association.
Listen, you can try to make jokes, but it's insane that you have not tried a Girl Scout cookie. Like we got to. I don't know how that's possible.
I'm bringing them to the next Heat game.
Yeah, you have.
I'm just bringing Girl Scout cookies from Media Row.
I won't have them. I just refuse. I'm actually not a cookies guy. I'm not a cookies guy. I like the occasional.
That's my favorite dessert. My favorite. It's my one weakness, actually. I think I could go if I was like on a diet restriction for something like medically, and they were like just no more dessert for the rest of your life or you'll die. Cookies would be the hardest thing. I might actually still eat a cookie. I love cookies.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know a lot of people too. I'm just not, I'm not an ice cream guy either. Like my wife loves ice cream. And
you don't like cookies or ice cream?
Dude, I'm not an idiot. I know those things are delicious. I just don't, that's not my go-to when it comes to like a snack or something like that. I'm more of a salts guy than a sweets. And if I'm going sweets, I usually like a muffin or something like that.
A muffin?
Doesn't even count as sweet. That's like a breakfast food.
You guys are ridiculous. But you know what's not ridiculous? Is making this show.
Like I don't like cookies and ice cream. Give me a nice old muffin. Good Lord, man.
No, hey man, I don't know what's wrong with you people. These are really solid food takes. If you can like mint and chocolate together, or even the god awful cucumber and sandwiches, then you can respect my muffin takes. Okay.
Aren't you a vegetarian?
That's right.
This is the same guy, Wes, who one time came after me for saying how much I love veggie sandwiches, even though he's a vegetarian.
Yeah, because you were like, "Oh, it's light and airy," which, first of all, like none of that should be used to describe a sandwich. Like, I will also fully admit I am the worst vegetarian of all time. Like, give me all the textured soy protein, make me pretend that it's actually a meat product or something like that. The more the better. Veggie meatballs in order to recreate a meatball sub, and whatever it takes. Like, that's fine with me. I am not like. I don't like mint. I don't like cucumber. I don't like shredded carrots. I don't like any alfalfa sprouts. None of that stuff. To me, that's not
vegetables. You're a vegetarian who dislikes vegetables. Got it.
Absolutely.
Okay. This is working.
Hey,
try a cookie.
Try a cookie. I've tried a cookie. I just haven't tried a Girl Scout cookie. I'll try a Tim Tam. If somebody wants to send one over here from Australia or something, I would love to try a Tim Tam.
But you won't try a Girl Scout cookie.
I'll try a Girl Scout cookie. I'm not opposed to it. I'm not going to like bull rush them or anything like that, or like storm my way past an 8-year-old girl and like yell at her. No, I don't. I refuse to accept your Girl Scout cookie.
The Will Smith slap.
No, on an 8-year-old girl. God, that's not fair. Oh boy, this show is really gone off the rails. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, Rohan, thank you for making this your last appearance on Locked On Heat. We really appreciate your take on everything. You got anything that you want to promote for our listeners and viewers?
No,
other than Girl Scout cookies.
Yeah, please enjoy all the cookies and ice cream that you want. That's all I hope for your listeners. I want to promote Locked On Heat. This is a great podcast. You guys do a fantastic job. Anytime I miss some games or whatever, I'll throw on Locked On and I feel caught up. So I just want to promote Locked On Heat. If you enjoy, for some reason you listen to this episode but not the others, like what are you doing? I want to promote Locked On Heat. You guys do truly a fantastic job.
Finally got to use the Tyler Herro drop.
I appreciate that.
All right. Well, we'll be here on Wednesday night, probably live, I imagine, after that
Yes.
Boston Celtics game, to talk about the game and see how it progresses, whether or not we'll be able to see the Miami Heat keep close to the Boston Celtics, whether or not Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown will make their return to the lineup. So make sure you check this out. Make sure to subscribe to the show. And also, thank you so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make your second listen Locked On NBA with Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. This is David Ramil. Thanks so much for joining me, Rohan, and thanks so much for joining me, Wes.
Wrap it up, B. Like and subscribe.